Welcome back to my video. I hope you enjoyed today's story. The decisions we make can lead us down paths from which there is no return. This story is about one such moment, so be sure to subscribe to the channel. Let's get started this Saturday night. Mary told James that she had to attend a company party. James couldn't deny the feeling of unease rising in his heart. In the past, she had never gone to a company party without prior notice. But this time, Mary just said it in a peremptory manner as if it didn't matter. Mary looked at him. "James, I can't miss this. It's just a party." James felt restless, but he didn't like the idea of going alone. He had a bad feeling about it. Mary walked over to grab her bag. "James, if you don't agree, I'll still go. It's my job and I have to attend. I don't want to argue. This is my job and I have to go." James could only stand still. His heart was filled with worrying and confusion. He had unanswered questions that kept his mind busy all night. That night, the clock struck 11. It was 11, but Mary was still nowhere to be seen. James sat on the sofa trying to relax, but his mind wouldn't stop racing. He stood up and paced back and forth in the living room. Finally, he decided to go into the bedroom and turn off the lights, hoping to forget his uneasy feeling. When he approached Mary's dressing table, the soft light from her forgotten phone caught his eye. He paused. Mary had been she'd been so eager to leave that she'd forgotten to bring her phone, which was something she'd never done before. James felt a strong curiosity rising in his heart. He hesitated for a moment, but then couldn't hold back any longer and reached for the phone. He unlocked it and looked through the messages. His heart clenched as the messages and pictures appeared on the screen. The messages were sweet and intimate, but not for him. They were words of James stood there, feeling like his entire world was collapsing around him. He couldn't believe his eyes. The messages and pictures on Mary's phone were so obvious, but that didn't make it any easier to take in. He wasn't just looking to get a divorce. He needed more evidence to protect himself legally and to make sure there was no going back. That night, he tossed and turned in bed, thinking about the future and what he could do to make things right. The next morning, James woke up to find Mary lying next to him, her face peaceful as if nothing had happened. Pain and anger welled up inside him. He felt a pang of sadness in his heart, but he held it back. He knew that he couldn't act hastily. Mary opened her eyes, smiling gently at him. "Why are you up so early?" James tried to keep his composure, answering in a natural tone, "Nothing. I just need to go to the bathroom." He stood up, left the bedroom, and walked into the bathroom, trying to calm himself down. Looking in the mirror, he found himself having to pretend that everything was fine. Although his heart was broken after washing his face and thinking things through, James left with a stronger determination. He knew he needed a clear plan to get out of this relationship safely and without leaving any shortcomings. He decided to hire a private detective to monitor Mary's every move and collect more solid evidence of the affair. James would continue to pretend to know nothing, stay calm and wait for more evidence. Meanwhile, the detective would keep a close eye on Mary to make sure nothing was missed. The next morning, James got a report from the detective. The email said that Mary had met a man at a small coffee shop. They sat drinking and talking for a few hours. The detective said there was no unusual behavior. There were no intimate gestures. It was just a normal conversation. After that, they left the shop and went home, with no further signs of an extramarital relationship. On Tuesday evening, Mary said she'd be home late because of work. James stayed calm, showing no emotion and just nodded slightly. He knew things wouldn't end as simply as they had the previous evening. In his mind, the plan had been drawn up, and he decided to wait quietly for the next developments. Around 1 p.m., James was sitting in the living room when his phone vibrated. It was a text from the detective. The detective said that Mary had met the man they'd been following again. This time, they left the company together, driving towards the city center at around 11 p.m. James's phone vibrated again, showing a new notification from the detective. He opened the phone, feeling anxious. The first images that appeared made him feel terrified. They were photos of Mary and the other man entering a hotel. The detective had sent James clear photos and videos, but also videos. The next photos and videos not only stopped the video, but they also recorded the two of them taking off their clothes and having sex without any restraint. James felt as if the blood in his body had frozen. His heart was pounding, but everything around him seemed to become silent as if time had stopped. The evidence was too obvious and undeniable. James knew that this marriage was over, and there was nothing left to save. The next morning, while Mary was still asleep, he planned the next step. He called to make an appointment with a divorced lawyer he had researched before but had never thought he would need so soon. He didn't want to waste any more time because this betrayal James had reached his limit at the lawyer's office. He presented all the evidence the detective had collected, photos, text messages, and even a video of Mary and the other man at the hotel. The lawyer listened carefully and nodded, confirming that this was enough evidence to proceed with the divorce quickly. There were too many legal difficulties. The lawyer helped James with the necessary documents, including which assets he wanted divided and the terms of the divorce agreement. James felt a pain as he signed the papers, but he knew that this was necessary to start a new life. He did not want to continue living in lies and suffering after the meeting with the lawyer. James left the office and waited for 3 weeks for the divorce to be finalized. He was calm when he spoke to Mary. He didn't show any anger or hurt, even though he was ready to end it all. Every day he watched Mary leave the house as if nothing had happened, but deep down he was determined that when the time came, he would leave without explanation. Finally, after 3 weeks of waiting, the divorce was finalized. James received a copy of the divorce papers from the lawyer, along with all the evidence the detective had collected about Mary's betrayal. He held the documents in his hands, feeling like a chapter in his life had officially come to a close. James woke up earlier than usual on Thursday morning. Mary was already up and getting ready for work, unaware of what was about to happen as she left the house. James watched, feeling a mixture of pain and disappointment, but he knew it was the right decision. He spent the rest of the day packing for his new life. He packed everything. He needed to take clothes, personal papers, and mementos. He was well prepared to leave the house they had once shared, which had now become a stranger to him. Before leaving, James placed a file on the living room table. Inside were all the evidence of Mary's infidelity along with a copy of the divorce papers. There was no note, no explanation. He had left everything behind to speak for itself. When he left, there was no word, only silence and emptiness. He felt free after months of being deceived and suffering. He entered a new life without saying goodbye. When Mary got back home that evening, everything seemed strangely quiet. She walked in the door calling James's name, but there was no response. The house was quiet, with only the dim light from the living room lamp remaining. Mary entered and quickly realized that something was wrong with the table. There was a document placed neatly as if waiting for her. Mary opened the document with a bit of curiosity, but her face fell when she saw what was inside. It was clear pictures of her and the other man in intimate moments, nude pictures, and undeniable pictures of sex. All of it exposed her betrayal of James. In front of her was the divorce papers, with James's signature clearly visible. He decided to leave her without a word, without a chance to explain or apologize. Mary was stunned, unable to believe that in a moment her marriage had ended. James was gone, without a word of farewell, without a word of reproach or explanation. He'd left only the cruel evidence in the divorce papers. Everything they had was gone. Mary collapsed, feeling the emptiness envelope her. She knew it was too late to fix anything. James had disappeared from her life, taking with him their faith, love, and all their hopes for the future. In the quiet house, Mary was left with only loneliness and extreme pain as she faced the consequences of her own betrayal. Mary tried to call James as soon as she realized what had happened, but the phone was turned off and she couldn't get through. She called and sent messages again and again, but only received silence in reply. In a moment of confusion and pain, Mary realized that James had completely disappeared from her life. Mary was forced to face the consequences of her wrong choices. There were no more excuses, no more chances to fix things. The stark truth was that they were through. It was a chapter in their lives that had closed, filled with tears and brokenness. They would have to bear the pain in their own way.